At 9:17 a.m., the cameras in the hearing room were positioned exactly as they had been for years. 3 angles covered the wide table, the panel of officials, and the audience. Staff members lingered near the walls, their eyes flicking between notes and monitors. A projector hummed softly in the corner, casting the faint green glow of routine preparation onto the polished wooden table. Everything was expected to proceed according to protocol. Everything was predictable. And then it wasn't. A single folder rested in front of one individual. The man carefully lifted its contents. The air, though controlled, felt heavier as the first page turned. A name was read aloud. Nothing about the way it was spoken suggested drama. No emphasis, no inflection. Just a measured cadence of formal procedure. And yet the room changed. Subtle at first, almost imperceptible, then undeniable. Chairs shifted slightly. Eyes widened fractionally. A water glass trembled. Cameras captured it all, though they were never meant to show the full story. Within this imagined timeline, the unexpected is enough to redefine the day then. It came. A question. Small, almost innocuous. Yet, according to this narrative, it carried weight far beyond his words. Why does this file exist? The room did not anticipate it. The people in it had rehearsed countless procedures, all designed to prevent questions like this. Moments later, the same question resurfaced, phrased differently, more deliberate, quieter this time. What circumstances allowed this name to appear repeatedly in a document that should not have been publicly discussed? Even repeated, it did not accuse. It did not demand answers. It simply existed, and in doing so, it created tension. Tension is a subtle thing. It is measured in pauses, in glances, in the way air moves differently around a table. Within this fictional scenario, it stretched 6 seconds, then 7, then 8. Every tick of the clock reinforced the unspoken gravity. The forbidden question was not answered, and that lack of answer carried its own weight. The man seated near the center of the panel, a deputy figure in this imagined timeline, stiffened. His hands twitched near the glass of water in front of him, hesitated, then knocked it slightly, spilling a thin arc of liquid across the polished surface. Cameras captured the tiny incident. No one spoke. The water pooled silently, reflecting the harsh overhead lighting. His shoulders lifted, then fell. The pen in front of him rolled slightly across the table, paused, and then stopped. The room remained quiet. Staff members adjusted their posture in small, unconscious gestures, shifting weight from one leg to the other, clasping hands together in subtle tension. Silence, measured in seconds, stretched into an eternity within the narrative. The names on the page, the repeated references, the implications, these were not spoken aloud, but they were felt. The cameras remained on, fixed in their positions, and the room existed in the tension between sight and speech, between knowledge and what could not yet be acknowledged. 2 weeks earlier, everything had been normal, or at least as normal as this fictional timeline allowed. The room itself was designed for predictability. Neutral walls, minimal decor, lights calibrated to avoid shadows, chairs aligned precisely. The air conditioning produced a steady hum, masking the soft shuffle of papers and footsteps along the polished floor. Sessions were scheduled as procedural. Statements were drafted. Questions anticipated. Responses rehearsed. In this scenario, nothing was supposed to deviate. Staff had routines. Officials had schedules. Everything ran like clockwork, or so it appeared. But even within the most controlled environment, human actions introduce unpredictability. And according to this narrative, one single element, a name repeated unexpected, could change everything. Within this imagined timeline, there existed one internal memorandum, not public, not real, not accessible to journalists or investigators. Only part of this fictional scenario. The memo outlined system activity logs, internal annotations, and repeated references to a specific individual. The name that had caused such tension appeared 47 times within the pages, always in different contexts, always in ways that suggested action, but never stating intent. The memorandum did not accuse. It did not establish guilt. It suggested inconsistencies between stated procedures and observed behavior, leaving observers to draw their own conclusions. in this narrative. The memo also contained annotations, references to timing actions, and alerts that were hypothetically ignored or delayed. It implied contradictions without asserting wrongdoing. The document existed as a narrative device, a tool to escalate tension, a reminder that within a controlled environment, small deviations can have enormous impact. Trust, within the scenario, did not break violently. It frayed. It shifted. It became conditional. Aides who once worked in alignment now paused before speaking. Glances that were once exchanged freely were now measured. Staff members avoided eye contact where they once sought guidance. Statements that had once been declarative became cautious, prefaced with qualifiers and hypothetical phrasing. The atmosphere suggested a provisional alignment. Cooperation continued, but with restraint, with hesitation, with an unspoken understanding that any misstep could exacerbate the tension further. Even the most loyal observers began to question. Could a routine system still function when the people operating it were uncertain of the consequences? Within this imagined timeline, the rupture was subtle, yet undeniable. Later that same day, hypothetical measures were discussed. Oversight mechanisms, internal reviews, procedural evaluations, discussions of possible hearings and inquiries. Nothing had been resolved. Nothing had been concluded. The narrative describes investigations opening within hours in this timeline, but as a hypothetical, they existed as possibilities, not facts. Questions about process, about procedure, about accountability were raised, but no outcomes were determined. The room, the participants, and the document remained suspended in uncertainty. No verdicts were issued, no conclusions drawn, only the awareness that actions and observations mattered, even if their consequences were unknown. That be why, at the end of the day, several questions lingered in the room, in the minds of participants, and in this fictional narrative. Why did that name appear so often in a document that was never meant to be discussed publicly? Were there prior conversations that explained or obscured the circumstances? Who noticed the implications first, the person reading or the person listening? How much of the procedural framework was genuinely in place, and how much was assumed for appearances? Would the tension continue to shape decisions in ways the participants could anticipate, or would it continue to ripple unpredictably? The room returned to order. Staff departed. Papers were collected. Cameras turned off. Yet according to this narrative, the silence, the tension, the unanswered questions, these followed everyone who had been present. No one could say definitively what had been real. The only certainty was the uncertainty itself, and the recognition that small actions within controlled systems could produce dramatic consequences.